Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
It's got technological capacity to increase the efficiency of people's experience at the border.
States across the country do have bans taking effect, and we are seeing patients now having to travel hundreds of miles to access care.
These were strictly indoor pet rabbits who were in good health, showing no signs of symptoms, and very quickly passed away.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with an update on the much criticized ArriveCan app. It's here to stay, at least for now. Canada's public safety minister dropped the news during a visit to Windsor today. The minister came to promote his government's new gun control legislation, but it was his comments on the app that grabbed attention. Dale Molnar reports.
Marco Mendicino got a demonstration of how this large-scale X-ray vehicle is used to find contraband in semi-trucks.
What we're doing is we're taking the image and we're trying to find any type of anomaly that's inconsistent with the load.
He also saw equipment used to screen bags for things like guns and a drug and gun sniffing dog.
Way to go, Nova.
Mendicino says the government's Bill C-21 is aimed at providing more resources like this to take the guns off Canada's streets.
It's really important that we send an unambiguous and clear signal to organized crime that if you're in the business of bringing a gun illegally into Canada for the purposes of doing harm, you're going to face stiffer sentences.
Now, when it comes to increasing tourism here at the border, despite pleas from border mayors to get rid of the ArriveCan app, Mendicino gave no indication that that's ever going to happen. In fact, Mendicino says they intend to use the app for what they say will make crossing the border more efficient.
ArriveCan was originally created for the purposes of COVID-19, but it has technological capacity beyond that to really shrink the amount of time that is required when you're getting screened at the border. So that's the vision, is really to utilize the platform to decrease the amount of time so that CBSA officers can really focus on the problem areas.
After his visit at the CBSA facilities, Mendicino met with local Indigenous leaders who reiterated their plea to the federal government to scrap the ArriveCan app. The Indigenous groups are trying to get government to live up to the articles of the Jay Treaty, which allows them to cross the border freely. They say ArriveCan makes it harder and is discriminatory.
People in many instances don't have the technology to download the apps and to have the necessary iPhones to go back and forth and take with them on their trips to the United States.
Sampson says the Americans are actually living up to the binational treaty better than the Canadian government by not having that extra layer of red tape. The Jay Treaty Border Alliance Summit in Windsor and Detroit wraps up tomorrow. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Michigan is now considered a battleground state in the fight for abortion access. Pro-choice advocates are rallying behind a ballot initiative that will ensure it stays that way. Meanwhile, a Detroit-based advocacy group is asking Canada's Prime Minister to back up his promise to Americans seeking services on this side of the border. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
This is a flyer about defending reproductive rights.
Abortion services are still legal in Michigan, but it's a fight to keep it that way.
Michigan is one of the top battleground states in the U.S.
A 1931 state law banning abortions is paused by an injunction, but Friday's ruling causes confusion.
Our largest health system announced that they would not be doing abortions. They have since reversed that announcement, but it was, we knew that these things would start happening.
Danielle Atkinson is a policy advocate in Detroit focusing on mothers of color.
My reaction was shock, dismay. Right now, you can see providers just hurrying and scrambling to make sure there is a Underground Railroad, if you may, to make sure that women and people who are seeking services have access.
And Canada promises from politicians.
And Canada will be there, not just for Canadians, but for friends around the world as well.
But words may not be enough.
We need the Prime Minister to make more than a statement. We appreciate so much his willingness to open up the country, but there are the logistics of immigration. right? So we need the Prime Minister to really make sure that people can go into the country safely and easily, and then come to find out that your system, because you have such a good system of healthcare for your citizens, it's hard to access those services as a United States citizen, right? So we couldn't necessarily go into a hospital, get an abortion, and then the nearest city to us, Windsor, there isn't a place, there isn't a clinic to access it.
What kind of barriers are in place if we look past the government and the healthcare system?
Yeah, the things that just are everyday problems for people who are marginalized. Do you have gas in your car to get there? Do you have someone who can watch your children?
The work continues in Michigan, a push for a ballot question this November, which would enshrine abortion services as a right.
Every Republican running for governor in the state of Michigan has embraced the 1931 law, making it a felony, no exceptions for rape or for incest. That's how stark this moment is. That's why this is a critical time for people to get engaged.
The governor saying abortion access is at stake in the upcoming election. Chris Hensing, CBC News, Windsor.
A virus that is almost always fatal for rabbits is now in Ontario. The rabbit hemorrhagic virus is extremely contagious and very resistant. This month, it was detected in 2 pet rabbits in southwestern Ontario. Its arrival in the province has veterinarians and rabbit owners anxious. Sonia Varma has more on this.
The case involves 2 pet rabbits from the same home. Prior to infection, they were healthy, but suddenly died. The owner took the rabbits, by then deceased, to a vet clinic in Forest, Ontario, in Lambton County, about a 40-minute drive from Sarnia. The vet who examined the bunnies explains how this hemorrhagic virus spreads.
The virus is spread by bodily fluids, by urine, by feces, by saliva.
And people, animals, even traffic can move the virus to another area.
That is amongst one of the reasons why this virus is of such great concern. It is very resilient in the environment. It's very easy to spread around with microscopic amounts. And then, of course, the potential outcome of this virus, its impact on the rabbits, whether they're wild or pet rabbits, is quite devastating.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency confirmed the deaths to be the first case ever in Ontario. Currently, it has no idea how the Lambton area bunnies came into contact with the virus. While it's generally fatal to wild and pet rabbits, it is not harmful to people or other animals. Its appearance in Ontario, however, has rabbit owners like Hazel Gabe worried. She lives in Ottawa and has a pet rabbit named Bun Bun. She's part of a Facebook group for rabbit owners, and there's a lot of chatter about this virus because owners know that if it's not contained and spreads to other parts of Ontario, it'll be very difficult to keep their pets safe.
You know, most people think of rabbits as being cage animals, but that's not actually the case. Most rabbits now live free roaming lives like a cat in your house. So in my little one-room apartment, it's quite hard to have strict biosecurity coming in, like, having a shower, taking off anything that's been in contact with the grass. That's the type of thing that they recommend if it turns out that it is in the environment around here.
There is no evidence that the virus has spread. As soon as the cases were confirmed in Lambton County, the CFIA quarantined the place where the infected rabbits lived. It believes the spread is contained. There are vaccines for the virus, but they're not readily available in Canada. McGill Worsley is applying to the CFIA for a special permit to import a vaccine and hopes to have it available at her clinic soon. Sonia Varma, CBC News, Windsor.
Police confirm that a man who likely drowned in Lake Erie earlier this month was a migrant worker. The incident occurred on June 20th in Leamington. Police say the individual was recovered by people on the shore who attempted to resuscitate him. The victim was then transported to hospital, where he later died. Police have identified the victim as 24-year-old David Josue Mendez Ramirez of Guatemala. The Ontario NDP is about to take the first steps toward picking a leader to succeed Andrea Horwath. The party will name an interim leader tonight and some of the rules for the leadership race. Let's bring in our senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley. Mike, what are you expecting to hear from the New Democrats this evening?
So, Katerina, all of my sources are indicating that the person who's going to be named as the NDP's interim leader is Peter Tabuns. Now, he's been the MPP for Toronto Danforth since 2006. He's also for a long time been the party's environment critic. He's been recommended for this interim leader post by the NDP caucus here at Queen's Park. So what happens tonight, really, it's just the formal rubber stamping of that by the party's decision-making body, which is called the Provincial Council. It meets at 7 o'clock tonight. The other thing that this provincial council is going to do is release some of the rules for the leadership contest, the contest to become the permanent leader to replace Andrea Horwath. Now, these are things like how much do the candidates have to pay to enter the race? How long is the race going to last? When does the vote take place and when is the convention? Now, the NDP, they choose their leader here in Ontario through a one-member, one-vote system, and so that means that everyone who is a party member gets an opportunity to have a say in who will replace Andrea Horwath.
And Mike, what will the NDP need to consider in picking that new leader?
So they're going to be looking for somebody who's got a lot of charisma, really, a leader who can eat into some of that populist appeal that Premier Doug Ford seems to have here in this province. They're also going to be looking for somebody who can help win back some of the working class vote that the NDP lost to Doug Ford and the PCs. And we saw obvious examples of that right there in Windsor in terms of the NDP losing seats that they had held for a long time to the PCs, but also they lost seats, of course, in Hamilton and in Timmins. There's a bit of a divide in the party over this issue. There's some who feel that the NDP in Ontario have strayed too far from their working class roots in the party's efforts to, let's say, pay more attention to issues of representation and raising the concerns of marginalized communities. So you might actually end up seeing that debate heat up as the leadership race, the race for the formal long-term leader of the NDP kicks off. Katerina?
Thanks for that, Mike. That's CBC senior Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley. A new Omicron subvariant is quickly becoming the dominant strain of COVID-19 in the province. According to experts, BA.5 is taking over, all as some are wondering about fourth doses of the COVID vaccine. Lorenda Redekop has the latest.
Dr. Sohal Goyal is the lead physician at a COVID cold and flu clinic. He says demand is picking back up.
The last 2 to 3 weeks, it's increased, especially this past week, where our phones are again ringing off the hook.
That's as Ontario wastewater samples indicate a rise in COVID. Here's what it looks like in the GTA. Dr. Goyal says, unlike previously, immunity doesn't seem to be holding 4 to 6 months after an earlier infection.
That's not what we're seeing now. So we're seeing individuals who were infected with Omicron a couple months ago getting reinfected. And what we believe is happening is that they're getting a new variant.
According to the province's science advisory table, it's likely BA.5, the Omicron subvariant, that's to blame.
Essentially, you had a version of the virus that went from very, very low prevalence just weeks ago. 1 to 2 months ago, it was very, very low prevalence, to it racing up to becoming the dominant strain as of now.
He says making sure you have 3 doses of the vaccine is important to protect against hospitalization.
There is still an enormous gap in the third dose vaccine, which we know is conclusively very protective, very important against both infections and severe disease. There's a big gap in Ontario.
Overall, unvaccinated people have a much higher rate of hospitalizations and ICU visits. This emergency room physician says right now he's not seeing a lot of COVID patients.
We have a few things on our side. We have summer weather, we can do a lot more outdoors, but I'm also looking at hospitals that are still short-staffed. And we'll struggle if there's any kind of increase in demand right now.
So far, fourth doses of the vaccine are only available for those 60 plus, immunocompromised and Indigenous people. Dr. Razek from the Science Table recommends getting one if you're eligible, realizing, though, that the protection may not last long. He expects an Omicron-specific vaccine will be coming sometime in fall. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for helping wealthy financier Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse underage girls. She was also fined $750,000. The sentence was handed down today in a New York courtroom. Maxwell was convicted in December of recruiting and grooming girls for sexual encounters with Epstein. The prosecution wanted at least 30 years jail term for Maxwell, who is now 60. The defense argued for no more than 5 years. Epstein died in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex offenses. The death was ruled a suicide. The U.S. Congressional Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol building in Washington held an unscheduled hearing today. An aide to Mark Meadows, President Donald Trump's former chief of staff, gave surprise testimony. Cassidy Hutchinson is being billed as a star witness by the committee.
That evening was the first moment that I remember feeling scared and nervous for what could happen on January 6th. And I had a deeper concern for what was happening with the planning aspects of it.
Hutchinson made those comments about a White House meeting on January 2nd. Those at the meeting included Hutchinson's boss, Mark Meadows, and Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani. She testified that following the meeting, Meadows told her, quote, "Things might get real bad." Hutchinson went on to say that on January 6th, Trump knew that there were armed demonstrators at his rally prior to the assault on the Capitol. Hutchinson has already testified before the committee 4 times. Today's session was her first public appearance. Back to local news now. There was oohing and there was awing at fireworks last night. After a COVID hiatus, the display was back with a bang. Here's a look at some of the highlights.
Fantastic opportunity for everybody to come out and, meet people. It's see community. The city's out. Everybody's playing. It's vibrant. Everybody's happy, having fun. What else can you ask?
It feels so special. It really does. And just the people here at Windsor, it's crowded, but it still feels like family. It's just very sweet. So I'm really glad to be here.
It's the most spectacular fireworks I've ever seen. So they go up higher than the clouds, way high.
It really was a magical night and just so nice to see the community out together enjoying that. Sunny skies right now throughout the day and just a few clouds overnight. Kim McDonald will be here with your forecast right after the break. Stay with us. It is officially fish fly season in Windsor, Essex. The insects only live for about 24 hours. Look at that. But their limited lifespan has not lessened the dislike that many have towards them. And they're making their presence known just looking at these images there. And depending on where you live, they go by different names. Fish flies, mayflies, June bugs, and we've also heard shad fly. And no matter what you call them, they're definitely gross. And this is a good time to bring in Kim McDonald. Have you seen that sort of thing? It was new to me when I moved to this region.
I've only seen it because I've worked here. So people tend to send in videos of the like shad flies up in North Bay. That's what they call them. I mean, they do really live for the moment, though. So, you know, be a fish fly, people. Live like it's your last day. 24 hours is all you got. I wish I had a better 24-hour forecast. We do have some rain in the forecast, although a lot of people want rain. So I shouldn't say that, because if you want it and you need it for your gardens and the lawns and the farms, we're not seeing a whole lot of it in Windsor. This is for the morning hours. 19 degrees will be the temperature. So we're already starting to warm up a little bit in the city. We're looking at daytime highs a little bit warmer than they were today. We were up at about 26 degrees. So first part of the night, not bad. We're going to see this cold front slowly moving in. Cloud cover comes in, a couple of showers first thing in the day, and then the potential for some thunderstorms later in the afternoon. So we've got a little bit of energy in the atmosphere, just enough for a pop-up thunderstorm. So keep it in mind, it's not a guarantee, but a 40 pop. So 29 degrees will be the temperature. It'll feel like 33. Okay, we can still handle it. It's Windsor, right? We're used to the sticky weather. There's our risk map for non-severe thunderstorms. So strong wind gusts, small hail possible, not a big deal. Looking ahead into the long-range forecast, though, we're also going to be looking at the potential for thunderstorms on Canada Day. Okay. That was just showing you CAPE. So CAPE is called convective available potential energy, and we're looking at a little bit of energy for the potential for thunderstorms on your Wednesday. Here we go. Wind speeds not so bad. Winds clocked about 35 kilometers per hour. Looking again at the long range forecast. So here comes the showers early in the day, potential for thunderstorms. Thursday we clear up. Friday, another chance of showers and thunderstorms. We've got a real soupy air mass. So subtropical air pushing up from the south, but it's clashing with this cold air, this low that's sitting over Hudson Bay. And those two things coming together create this boundary and the potential for thunderstorms. So again, it's a very typical forecast in the long range. Hot, soupy. 27.2 is what the average is on Canada Day in Windsor. 34.9 is the record, and we're looking at 34 on Friday. So potentially breaking a record on Canada Day, and watching for the potential for storms.
Exactly. Sounds like Windsor. Thanks for that, Kim.
It sounds like Windsor, yes. Exactly. You're welcome.
When we come back, some more fireworks highlights. Stay with us.
Well, this exhibition very much points to the personal memories of the refugees. So it's very intense.
Welcome back. A new museum in Denmark is highlighting an all too common experience, being a refugee.
Well, this exhibition very much points to the personal memories of the refugees. So it's very intense, very emotional. From a political side, all the questions of refugees is very, very complicated. From the personal side, it is very, very easy. We have to stop the wars and we have to help the people.
Well, there are two main stories in the museum. There's, of course, the story about the German refugees coming here in the end of World War II. The other story is about refugees, about flight through the last 100 years coming to Denmark. I hope the visitors will get a broader understanding of why people flee, how they flee, and how it affects people to have been refugees.
Today, refugees are being reduced to numbers. One forgets that behind the concept of refugees, there are people who have their own stories to tell. Quite ordinary people who have become refugees because of something they have not chosen themselves. So I love this place because here we see the stories, the living stories, instead of the numbers.
My brother, 2 years older than I, he was hospitalized in this very building, the other wing of this building. And I remember visiting him there. The refugees were looked after, they were taken care of, they had accommodation, they found a safe place, and for us, we got a chance to start a new life.
That's it for CBC Windsor News. And before we leave you, one last look at the beautiful fireworks display from last night. Thank you so much for watching and have a great night.